Welcome back to Welsh Miniature Board Gamer, and today I'm going to have a go at converting some of my old DVDs into some terrain. So the first thing we're going to need to do is spray them with some primer or just some spray cans. That'll probably do it, just to take away a bit of the shininess so that what we're going to be building will have something to grip onto. So I'm going to make some rocky crags because I figure that that's probably going to be the easiest thing to build for my first videos and this sort of proof concept for me. So I'm going to plan out what I want to do here and just draw in roughly the sort of idea. Now I got 6 of these DVDs, so if you're going to build one, you may as well build many. That's my thoughts on this. So we can just mark it out roughly what we're going to do and crack on. The main thing we want to do is make sure that we cover the circle in the middle, obviously, because that would be a bit of a problem. So how are we going to build up the landmass? Well, you can use insulation foam, you can use cardboard, or you can use this underfloor heating foam, which I've got, which is the stuff that I put under my laminate flooring to give it that sponginess, you know. So I got loads of this left over from when I fitted our floors, so that's what I'm going to use. If you got like proper insulation foam, you could use that. That'd probably be better because you can get different thicknesses of it. But this is all I've got, so this is what I am going to use. Now, if you can hear a strange snoring noise in the background, that's my puppy, so don't worry about that. I'll have to excuse him, he's got some nasal problems. So yes, what I'm going to do is I break up pieces of this underfloor heating or underfloor insulation foam into just jagged pieces and stick them on. So I'm going to try and make this like a rocky outcrop which is reaching up so that, you know, I can block line of sight, etc. Now some of these pieces you want to have sort of overhanging, and some of it you want to be going inward, so give some sort of variation. And when we come to actually sculpting over it, it'll give it some interesting sort of grooves and indentations and, you know, outcrops, etc. So it doesn't have to be tidy at all. This is just a substructure. It's not going to be anything important. So constantly check whether, you know, it's the height you want it to be. So I want this to be quite a tall piece, so I'm going to keep adding until I can no longer see my miniature on the other side of the terrain piece. So that's it. We'll just keep breaking up these pieces until we are finished with this one. So this is pretty much it as we finished building up the substructure. This is about how high I want it and, you know, about how thick I want to fill out this entire CD. Now the one good thing about making this is, hang on as I show you this, there you go, that's roughly what I want. I'm showing you a miniature next to him. As you can see, there's no way he's going to see over this piece. So then I'm going to move on to my next one, and I'm just going to keep doing the same. So this one I just want to really fill out the central part of it. So I'm just going to break up pieces and, as you saw before, keep building up the structure. Now we're going to be covering this in sculptor mold, so, you know, it doesn't have to be pretty. This is the way this one's turned out, and, you know, there's no wrong or right way. Like so. And here's another one, and yeah, we'll just keep going until you've done all 6. Now, like I said, the one good thing about having them on CD basis or DVD basis is all these terrain pieces are going to be the same size. So if you are a competitive player or you're doing like a competitive tournament, every piece of scenery, if you put them all on these same size DVD bases or CD bases, no one can complain, really. You can think like, all right, we got like 10 pieces of scenery, all of them put on like this, and, you know, you can put 5 down, I'll put 5 down, and, you know, everything's going to be pretty much the same. You know, they're all covering the same like 5 inch area. So you know, it gives a bit more of a bit more of a fair amount of terrain, and no one can really complain too much about it. So now we're moving on to the sculptor mold. Now I'm terrible at mixing up sculptor mold, so follow whatever it says on the packaging. I try to, but I always get it wrong. It's always too wet for me, and it takes like days and days and days for it to actually dry out. But then once you have mixed up your sculptor mold, just rub it into the substructure so that you can get just get it to stick on to begin with. We can come back afterwards and smooth out everything, but for now we're just rubbing in the sculptor mold into the crevices and into the concave and convex pieces, there you go, to make it interesting, to cover it all up, cover up all of that green foam. And we're just going to cover it all. We don't want any of the green foam showing, because if we spray it later, we don't really want it eating into the insulation foam. So we want to cover it all. If you want to keep that sort of tiered sort of striation of the rock or whatever, sediment of the rock, with those layer lines, really this isn't going to be the way for you, because sculptor mold is so thick. It's going to cover most of those lines. You're going to see bits, but most of it is going to be disguised. So if you're going to do that, maybe use plaster. But the only trouble is with using plaster or skim or whatever you want to use is I find that I chip it a lot, while sculptor mold is that much harder, and I much rather use sculptor mold for that reason. So yeah, you push it in and then you just dab at it and keep dabbing at it, just with your fingers, dab at it, and you'll be pushing down all those sort of weird little points that you've got. You'll be adding a little bit of texture of your fingers. You just keep patting it and patting it until everything feels a bit more natural, and you don't have these little like stalagmites sticking up or anything. So give it a little bit of a rub just to smooth off the really rough edges. Now you do want some parts like sticking out from other parts, so don't smooth it down into just like a gelatinous blob. You want something quite interesting. So here's my aggregate. So I've got some, I think it's birds stones that they put on the bottom of bird cages, etc., and some just random pieces of stone and what have you that I've got mixed up in this. So I'm going to put down a bit of PVA glue and then just sprinkle on the rocks to just give a little bit of different texture to the model or the scenery. So you sprinkle it on, tip off the excess, and keep moving. So here's another one. Put a bit of PVA glue down where I think I'm going to want some, just a point of interest, or where rocks might have slipped down from the side of this hill or hillock or whatever it is. Spread it out with a watered brush, and then just sprinkle on the aggregate just to give it a bit of a bit of rubble and a bit of interest. Now you could do this after you've painted it if you want. If you got the rocks at the right sort of colour. These rocks for me aren't the right colour for what I'm going for, so I just basically as putting them on beforehand, and then I'll paint them later. And to be honest, I might not even have them showing later, because we've been putting flocks and paint and what have you on it, but it'll add a bit of a different texture if nothing else. And that's all 6 of them done. So after this we're going to go on to painting them. So obviously we paint them black to begin with. If you've got a spray can, spray them with a spray can. I actually have run out, so I had to paint them all by hand. And then after this, we're going to dry brush a grey over. Now this is a pretty heavy dry brush, and this grey actually wasn't as grey as I thought it was when I was doing it. It was quite a coffee coloured grey, shall we say. It is grey, but it has that sort of, I don't know, oatmeal sort of colour to it, which actually it works fine, so any grey will do. But we want to cover like 95% of the face with this colour, as you can see, just leaving any of the recesses, etc. But this leaves it you can see the nice texture starting to pop. You know, you can see a bit of interest in this thing already. And this is just with our first colour just whacked on. Now you can come back later if you want to, if you feel like it dies down too much, but give it a few minutes because the colour will fade into the rock, and my paint is still quite wet, the black coat, so some of my colours are mixing in to get sort of a wet blend, if you like, onto the scenery. So yeah, you just whip around, getting this coat all over the rocky terrain. Now it doesn't matter if you cover where you're going to be putting flock and all down later, because you can cover it with other paints, etc. So once we've done that, we're coming back with this more ochre yellowish colour. Now I've never done this style of rock before with, you know, with these multiple colours, but I thought I'll give it a go, and it kind of works. I kind of like it. It breaks up that sort of grey and black, you know, that sort of typical artificial looking rock, you know, so it does give a bit of different colours. And like so many of terrain creators say, you know, rocks aren't all black and grey and what have you. Which is true, but so some are. So, you know, don't worry too much about having grey rocks. So after we've done that, we're going with this sort of, I don't know what colour that was, I couldn't quite see, but it's more of a browny sort of, it's got a bit more of a mustard colour to it, you know. Just to add a bit more, and I just sort of dry brushing and also sort of just stabbing every now and again, you know, just to get some variation, some randomness to the colours. And at the moment it looks a little bit weird, but as it dries and as we add colours, it starts to look okay. You could do that with sort of wet wash, tiger stripe, or tiger blotch, whatever they call it. I've never done it, so I'm just doing it this way because I've never done it. So then I'm getting a white. Ideally I would have wanted like a creamy colour, but I couldn't actually find my cream colours, so I'm going to use this white and just make sure I do such a delicate little dry brush over that I'm just only catching the edge, and this takes away some of that really bright vibrancy of the yellows. As you can see, I'm making sure I get rid of most of it, but then just flicking the brush over. Now if you go too heavy with this, you can always go back a step just to cover up the white, so occasionally you might see a little bit of white there. But again, you know, you can say, well, there's certain ores or whatever in the rock which makes it that colour. If it's really horrible once you've finished and you still got like a white mark, you can always get like a Sharpie or something and just do a little black dot on top of it, and no one will notice the fact that you had this white dot there. No one will not notice a black dot because it'll just look like a little recess in the rock. So then I'm going over all the areas where I think I'm going to probably put some flock. So I'm going to go over them with a brown. Ideally, again, I would have wanted to go with a darker brown than this, but it's not going to really matter. This is only going to matter if the flock ever gets rubbed off, that you're going to see something brown underneath, as opposed to, you know, something which may look a bit weird if it was out of place or whatever. But at least if the flock gets brushed off here, you're just going to see brown, so it's going to look like mud or whatever. So here we are, I've changed camera angles, and I'm going to put some flocking down. So first of all, I'm using PVA again, and I'm going to use Geek Gaming Scrublands, I think I started with. I do it on this one, just because I wanted to see what it looked like. I think maybe it's too dark for what I want to use it for, so I do change it as I go on. So this is the Geek Gaming Base Ready Scrublands. So you need to push some of these pieces in because some of it's like spongy bushes and what have you. So with this one, I've decided to move over to, I think it's World War Scenics, and I think it's their dead grass or light grass, I'm not sure, something like that. And it's like a mixture, and I like this colour, but again, I'm not 100% sure if it was the right colour, so I just sprinkle it onto the glue, let it grab where it wants to grab, and let it come off where it doesn't want to. I do it twice to make sure that it's covered, etc. And the one good thing is we can tip it what we don't use back into our pot. Now after doing this, I go back to I think this is a Geek Game Scenics, and I think this is no, not Tundra. I forget which one this one is. It's one of the greener ones. I wanted to add a bit more greenery to it because my dead grass, or whatever grass I used previously, was just too brown. So I wanted to add a bit of greenery to show that these, there is some alive grass here. And I'm going to do this around the edge of that darker grass colour, or the deader grass colour. So to the sides there's been a lot of moisture gathering, and the grass and the moss and what have you has grown along the edges well, while in the middle it's dried out and it's starting to die a bit. So, that's my thing. You could just go with the plain, gamer's green grass, and that would work just as well. But yeah, I just wanted to show a bit of a variation in colour. Obviously, until it dries like this, it's starting to dry here, you can see the colours coming through a bit better, like so. And I did 6 of them, so there's the 6 done. And a miniature for size. So they're big enough to block line of sight and give you a bit of interest. So here's a bit of a flyby with my camera. Excuse me if you're feeling a bit car sick. It's a wobbly thing, but it shows that the height of them, and it can show you how they could look. Now I've really enjoyed using CD bases and DVD bases. I think they are a good way of doing terrain, and a way of uniformly, okay, well, you've got the same as me because you've got 3 of these and I've got 3 of these, or whatever. It works out pretty good if you're in that sort of competitive mindset where everybody has to have the same size terrain on their side of the board. So going forward, I'm going to probably go on and make some more, maybe trees on the next lot. Actually, that's probably my next video, will be me doing like a treed version of it. And, you can make woods, etc. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please leave a like, share, subscribe, and all those things. But until next time, goodbye from me, Welsh Miniature Board Gamer.